What's up, everybody? Big Herc 916, and you're getting down with another fresh out interview. I have my man Shane with me here today, and man, we're going to get into it. He has a story to tell. He reached out to us, and man, we finally made it happen. So, Shane, tell the people about like where you're from, how you grew up, your childhood, stuff like that.
Okay, so again, I'm from East Toledo. That's in Ohio. About an hour south of Detroit, hour and a half west of Cleveland. We're kind of right in the middle of all big cities. So we're kind of a hub, you know what I mean? And my story is like everybody else's story. I had a mom who had me at 16. Um, she was in the dope game, selling dope at first, eventually got to using. So I grew up in trap houses and hoe houses, and gambling spots and shit like that. Um, my grandparents, they were the straight arrow people. You know, they had their life together, and so they was always my safety net, so to speak. Um, so I always had one foot in the streets and one foot off of them, and they became my hindrance because my dad died when I was 8. I didn't know him much. I met him a couple of times. He had started coming around right before he passed. He died in a high-speed chase running from the police. So that was kind of traumatizing, seeing him in his casket, not really knowing him, finally just starting to get a relationship with him, and then he was gone. Um, Eventually I had to move in with my grandparents, and it was a blessing and a curse because that happened at about 9 years old, 10 years old. I moved in with them, and the damage had already been done. I had already been through a lot at that time. So they overcompensated. And it got to the point to where I wasn't getting treated for the things I needed to get treated for. I was just getting spoiled because they felt bad. So you get what I'm saying? So I got to the point to where, fuck it, I'm in these streets. I'm gonna do whatever I want, and they're just gonna get me out of it. And that was my mentality. And it was pretty much like that my whole adolescence. I started gangbanging at 13. Uh, Neighborhood stuff. And that was kind of my big downfall. My first case I caught at 13. It was just a stolen car. A couple buddies of mine had stole a car, and me and my cousin went joyriding with them. Long story short, we all ended up getting probation for it. My 6 month probation ended up lasting the rest of my juvenile till I was 18.
Mm.
Um, I haven't been, put it like this, that happened in 1993, and I just finally got out of the system 5 months ago.
Damn.
Yeah, I haven't been out of the system since. Um, so the first time I went to jail was for a pack of cigarettes. I was in jail on a PV, stole a pack of cigarettes because I was working restitution. While I was out working, I swiped a pack of cigarettes. Me and my little crew was smoking. I got violated again, and they sent me up the river for 6 months. And that was the worst thing because I came out a monster. Because I had no idea. I thought I was, you know how it is. You when you're running the streets, you think you got it. You think you know it all. You think you've seen it all. You think you're especially when your name's ringing like that out here, but going in there, it was a rude awakening, and all they did was create a monster. But to back up a little bit. So yeah, I caught that first case at 13, and ended up having to go do some time. Got out. At 18, they finally terminated that juvenile probation. 6 months later, I was in the joint. My first case, I was living with some chicks. Me and a buddy of mine was living with some girls, and while I had ended up getting arrested for a weekend, and while I was out, they packed up all my shit and threw it on the porch. So I wiped their whole house down when they was gone. Everything. If it wasn't nailed down, I took it. and that was my first case. And
Mm.
yeah, and it just progressed from there. I did 2 years on that case. I was out 60 days, and then me, my cousin, and his stepfather went on a robbery spree and accumulated a bunch of robberies and some kidnappings and the whole nine. They threw the book at us then. I ended up catching a blessing. I did 7 on that. So I did 2, was out 60, went back, did 7, came home from that and I was home 6 months. When I came home, I was messing with a chick who was married, or she was in a relationship. And I didn't know about dude. She had threw dude out of her house. But I was creeping with her. I'd come over, smash, dip, and that was the routine. Came over one day, he was there, jumped on me. I ended up stabbing him up, and that was my last 10.
Mm.
And so yeah, that's been my in a nutshell, that's been my journey. Uh,
What would you say as far as, man, I always tell people that the circle of friends you have around you and the influences, because I had good grandparents too, but when you leave your grandparents house and you hang around other people and they're doing stuff that your grandparents wouldn't approve of, but they have a bigger influence on you, you get kind of get pulled into that world. um, was that like a thing with you too, where you would kind of go to these places and you knew you shouldn't be doing certain things, but you just, because of just being in that environment, it was hard to get away from it?
so my childhood was weird in that aspect. Um, I was into sports when I was little, so I had different kinds of friends. I had the sports kids that I was friends with, the ones that stayed out of trouble across the tracks. If I wanted to go get away and just play some ball for a few hours with no issues, them type of kids. And then
Mm.
I had the in the streets kids. You know what I mean? And I always was back and forth. Always was back and forth. But when the gang banging really started where I'm from in the late 80s, early 90s, it didn't really hit us until a friend of mine, they had stomped him. They almost killed him. He was 14 years old. He had got caught by a bunch of bloods in our hood. We wasn't banging, but it was our hood. And they had came from a whole other side of town. And they had caught a buddy of ours, and they stomped him out. They put him in a coma. They stomped him really bad. And that was when the kind of, and then next thing you know, we got a name. They got, and then, and then the Bloods and Crips, of course, they was prevalent. But the funny thing about that is the kids that I grew up gangbanging with, it didn't take me long to wash my hands of that. But the kids that I grew up gangbanging with, I would consider my enemies now. And all the kids that I was banging
Mm.
against was my guys in the joint. Because when we
Wow.
got to, my first penitentiary was Lebanon. I don't know how many people are familiar with Ohio prisons. Lebanon is one of our worst prisons. And that was my first prison. And I had to go there on an accident. I was actually classified to a brand new prison. It was going to be the Hotel 6 right in Toledo.
Mm.
They had forgot to insulate a whole side of the building when they built it. So the hub, CRC, was getting backloaded of inmates waiting to ride out to Toledo because they couldn't open it up. So they just started kicking guys out. And of course, if it was raining pussy, I get hit in the head with a dick. So I get sent to Lebanon. You know what I mean? I get sent to Lebanon, and you know, that's a Cincinnati Dayton prison, so that's Southern Ohio. So there ain't but 100 Toledo cats in a 3,500 man prison. And you know what I'm saying? And I'm 18. So I got to worry about the booty bandits. I got to worry about the ABs because all my friends are black. And at that time, I was super hood. You couldn't tell me shit at 18.
Mm.
And my first 20 fights was probably with ABs and booty bandits. and left
Damn.
them home. But so yeah, so all the people that I grew up hating, we was like that because we was all we had. And so it was kind of, yeah.
I tell people all the time, like as you mature and you put things in perspective, because like it's hard to tell a young person that, hey man, what you're doing, you got to think about your options, you got to look at the big picture, because you think you're a superman. I mean, at 18 I was, I could dunk a basketball, I could bench
Right.
300, I was like, running around fight, it was like that was exciting, you felt all this stuff. But not having, I think, the same thing, a father figure, even though grandparents, it wasn't enough. You needed like that strong male role model. And I think that's the biggest thing with a lot of these kids is having that dad who sits you down, and sometimes you're gonna break down and cry, man. He's gonna make you think about some stuff. And if you want to be a man, he'll tell you, let's man up then. And he'll check you. And you gotta respect that. And that respect goes a long ways because it helps you avoid dumb shit. And as you get into the prison system, I know for myself, as I start looking around these dudes and conversating, you're like, man, I'm around some of these dudes are straight sociopaths. I grew up with a better foundation than this, so I had to be careful and really not get too involved with these dudes because you don't want to be too friendly because then they feel some kind of way when you start pulling away. But then you still got to be cordial because a lot of dudes is hating. Oh man, you think you better, or man, you don't want to kick it, or this and that, and you always reading or you always doing this. So it's a weird place, man. Prison. I tell people, man, and you get the personalities, and there's nothing glorified about it, man. And kids now, they're showing the cell phones because they got, I mean, guys got the phones, they got these clothes in there, whatever they're doing. When I was up, man, it's not, dude, they're trying to make you feel as comfortable as possible in there now to where you don't mind going. And, for a lot of these people, man, they don't realize there's things that can happen in there. Who knows? You might not make it home.
That's I've been home 5 years roughly. I mean, I've been back 3 times for 6 month sanctions since my release without catching a case. Make that make sense?
What do
Yeah.
you mean you went back six times for what?
So I don't know how many states is like this, but in Ohio now they went. So they got, okay. So there's kind of 3 eras of prison time in Ohio. You got the old law, which was before me. Then I was considered new law, which is after 96. But in 2000 and I believe 17 or 18, they changed the law again. But anyway, the law from 96 to 2017, if you got sentenced, it don't matter what it was called flat time. So like if, you got 10 years, you did every day of that 10 years, no good time. And
Damn.
and also, if you're a violent offender, when you get out, you're on what's called post-release control for 5 years, which is basically just parole. So you do your whole time, plus you come home and you're on parole.
Damn.
Yeah, and if you're a violent, we got what's called the Reagan-Tokes Act in Ohio. A girl from Ohio State University had got raped and killed by a guy who was on an ankle monitor. And he had been running around Columbus raping women. He had like 4 rapes
Oh,
in one weekend on an ankle
God.
monitor, bro.
Oh my God.
I was in Toledo with dude. He was
Wow.
them guys that'll sit in the cell and wait for a woman CO to work, and then every time she goes by the cell, they're in there jacking off. He
Yeah, yeah.
he was one of those type of dudes.
Oh man.
Right. And he comes home and he's got a register. He's on parole. He's got an ankle monitor on. So they're supposed to be monitoring his every movement. And he's running around Columbus, Ohio, raping women. And he catches this young girl with her whole life ahead of her coming home,
Wow.
and he rapes her and he kills her execution style. So now, but they didn't know, what he didn't realize was her parents had money longer than Train Smoke, and they fought it and they sued ODRC, and now there's a Reagan-Tokes Act in Ohio, which is what, so if you're a violent offender in Ohio, it's a wrap for you. If you're on paper and you look at somebody threatening and they call the police on you, it's a 6-month sanction without question. and they turned the whole hub in Lorain, Ohio, into just parole prison for violators. 3,500 of them.
So you've had somebody say something and you had to go back 5 times?
Bro, the first so the I got so me and my girlfriend, me and this chick I met when I came home, we was walking through Walmart and we were going to the self checkout aisle, and this lady like sped in front of us, and her cart hit ours and everything. And my chick started arguing with her. They went back and forth for like 5 minutes. I'm trying to keep my chick, and there was a dude with her, and he wasn't playing peacekeeper. He was lightweight sizing my chick up. So eventually, after like 5 minutes, he kept creeping. He was saying little shit. And I just told him, like, bro, stay over. Like, if you come over here, I'm going to stretch you out in this bitch. And I did 6 months for that. They didn't even press charges. They trespassed that other family, and I did 6 months for that.
Yeah, man.
Then another time, the same chick, I called the police. Swear to God, she got to cutting up my shoes, all my shit. She was cutting up my shit. We was getting into it, and we was arguing. And when she got to doing it, and she was drunk, and I knew what it was. And I told him, I said, no crime has been committed. I said, I just did 21 years in prison. I don't have the tools to deal with what I'm dealing with. Can you send somebody out here to help me? They didn't even come. They came the next day. I swear to God, we was at the Motel 6, bro. They came the next day, and as me and her was checking out, they were coming in. And the manager pointed at us.
Wow.
God's honest truth. He came up, he pulled me out of the car, and he said, Wood County, when a domestic violence call gets called, somebody's going to jail, and with your record, it's going to be you. And I did 6 months for that.
God, man.
That's
Woo, shit.
Yeah. Yeah, they're not fucking around. If you're a violent offender in Ohio, bro, they got something for your ass. They are not.
Oh my God. Damn, dude, that's worse than federal probation.
Mm-hmm.
That's wild, man.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so you just kicked paper?
I just kicked paper. I started my bit in '09. It was a 10-year bit. I just got off paper 6 months ago, 5 months ago, some shit.
God, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. You definitely. That was one thing. Like when I didn't tell a lot of females I hooked up with that I had the time, but like anytime I seen some weird shit, man, I just get ghost. Like I would look at a female, and when she started talking and she's like, "Oh, my baby daddy's big so and so." I'm like, "Who?" Now see, I'm like, I'm cool. I'm not. I
Yeah.
don't want to, baby daddy coming over here. I'm,
Yeah.
doing my thing, or he tripping. He got cousins, brothers. You're in the hood. Where you live at? You live over here by and by the project. I'm cool. I'm like, bro, I was so scared to get caught up over anything, and then being with my record, same thing. Armed bank robbery. Somebody they call the cops on me. It's a wrap. You know what I mean? Like big guy. You know what I mean? They could say stuff. So I was really careful, man. And to guys out there, it could be good one day, and then if a female gets mad, whatever, and then she's like, "Well, I didn't mean it," but by then it's too late.
Mm-hmm. For sure. I'm gonna tell you like this, bro. At the end of the day, every issue I've had, every time I've went to the joint, it's been because of a female issue in one way or another and alcohol involved. Every time. And you don't know what you're gonna lose. You get what I'm saying? I lost my mother on my last bit, bro. I was in the hole. And you take certain shit for granted because you always got it. And then, I went from youngster to school overnight. Time goes by, bro. I looked up one day and had 21 years. When I came home, I had 21 years in the penitentiary. I was 39.
Yeah.
Almost 40. Almost 40.
Was there anything that you did differently, when you got out the last time? I mean, did you ever get in there and find like a good mentor, or get around somebody that was like on some positive shit, somebody that gave you anything to kind of like put you on a different path? I mean, um,
So yeah. No, I always I'm what people would call a crash out or a bug out. Where what I mean is like my circle, I got a circle of a lot of solid people that are on what you're explaining. But I got like a demon. I got like a I don't know how to express certain feelings without violence. I don't know how to, and that's because of the time I had. They sent me uphill at 18. They sent me to Lebanon. For those of, there was no Priya back then. They had 3 shower heads. But at any given, you'll never get in them showers and there'll be less than 6 people in there. You have to go to them showers with your cellie so you don't get assaulted. You got to have somebody watch your back. And while you're getting wet, he's soaping up. And then you switch out. He'll rinse off.
yeah,
It's the car wash. And
yeah.
it created a monster. When you're fighting when people are coming at you like that, man, that's a humbling experience. That's a whole different can of worms. You get what I'm saying?
Well, those places, those are why we have those places. I remember going to Sac County at 18, and dude, there's dudes who've been in the pen, and they looking for dudes who ain't never, and they're predators, hella
Absolutely.
swole. You know what I
Absolutely.
mean? Dudes looking for dudes like who look soft, and dude, you
Absolutely.
gotta look hard. You're not Peter gazing. You're trying to do your thing. You got
Right.
your towel. You know what I mean? You might got something underneath your towel. You got your shoes. I mean, you got to be ready, bro. Because like you said, dude will try to knock you out, do some shit. Dudes are gang banging in there. And I was 18 when I went, Sac County, went to YA, but going through that stuff, man, and they gang banging up in there. And it's wild, man. I seen dudes get piss thrown on them. I seen dudes like, they fuck with their tray. I mean, just, and dudes talking shit coming through the bar. I mean, it's just all type of shit, man. And,
Mhm.
you don't get up in the morning, somebody eat your tray, try to get your food, all that type of bullshit, man. And you're a
And
young
if you
person.
don't, and if you don't respond, you're now
Oh, yeah, you got to handle that.
you gotta handle that.
You got to handle that. As dude ate 2 trays and they like, dude ate your food, you got to put hands on him right then on the spot.
Without
So,
question.
um, I can understand what you're saying, and it's almost like, and I've talked with military guys about this. You got to go through almost like a decompression or like being able to get it out, man. Because I know I had a lot of. I remember one time being disrespected by a dude at a car spot, and dude, I got in my car and I cried because I was gonna go do something. I was gonna like this dude talked so greasy, and then he told me to get the f out of here. I'm looking around and there's another dude looking, and I'm thinking this dude just ripped me off, and I'm like, dude, I'll break your fucking neck. I'll choke you out right here. You don't know who you're talking to. And then I thought about all the cameras, the witness, all this stuff, and I'm like, I felt like a punk, like this dude got over on me. And
Right.
so I had to go and just sit in my car, man. And I was really mad, and I thought about everything I would throw away. And with my record, I would have been, I would have been done. So I like, it's like you gotta let go of that, but it's hard because like you think like, dude, if you would have said that in any other situation, I would have just busted your whole face up.
hmm It,
So
I feel you on that because I have severely damaged a lot of important relationships since I've been home. Unintentionally. Just because of how I'm wired. Not knowing when to pump the brakes, not knowing when to lay off, uh, going too hard, argument, getting over it the mental the damn I tell people all the time, man, the lines get blurred. So when you come home, right and wrong, right and wrong is common sense, but it sounds like it. But when you're living in an environment where everything is wrong 100% of the time, year after year after year after year, you know what I'm saying? How can it not become part of your, it's sink or swim. You know, it's sink or swim. I know when I got in there, I was coming home. And I was gonna do it without being a victim.